Welcome to BBC Motor Reviews channel. Yamaha Fazer 600, 1998 to 2004, Review and Used Buying Guide. Related, Easy Fit Kit turns Yamaha Fazer 600 into retro race rep. In fact, since Yamaha stopped the FZS 600 Fazer's production in 2003, it has taken them until the launch of the Tracer 700 to replicate the Fazer's magic formula. However, in 1999 the Yamaha Fazer 600 was the best-selling bike in its class, and by 2002 the firm had sold over 83,000 units. There's a reason the Yamaha Fazer has such a strong following. As soon as its wheels start to turn you are right at home. It is ease personified, and most of this warm feeling comes from the wonderful motor. With the Fazer, Yamaha got the basics right, and that's what makes it such a great bike. The tank range is long, the seat comfortable, the fairing effective, the brake sharp, and the motor strong in the mid-range and extremely reliable. The suspension may be a bit baggy, but if that's the Yamaha Fazer's only real fault 22 years after it was launched, then that's not bad going. Useful Yamaha Fazer 600 specialists include www.foc-u.co.uk and yamahaclub.com. Read on for our full used buying guide. Ride quality and brakes. Launch impressions. When you push the Yamaha Fazer 600 to the limit, which is easy with those blue dot or one brakes up front, it dives a little bit and loads up the front end. It waggles a bit, but the handling is generally confidence-inspiring, and if you take it steady you could ride to Budapest on a Yamaha FZS 600 Fazer and feel no severe aches or pains. Yamaha Fazer 600, what does it ride like now? With limited suspension adjustment, post-2000 models have variable damping in their forks. The Yamaha Fazer is a bit wobbly in the corners, and the Sumitomo calipers shared with the R1 quickly overwhelm the forks when you brake hard. But where on some bikes this is an annoyance, on the Fazer it makes you giggle and adds to the amusement factor. There's just under 100 brake horsepower in the Yamaha FZS 600 Fazer's detuned Thundercat 600 cubic centimeters, 4-cylinder engine, and that's plenty for backroad fun, as well as motorway commuting if needs be. The Yamaha FZS 600 Fazer delivers its power in a wide spread, and the 6-speed gearbox is there if you feel like playing tag with sports bikes. Yamaha Fazer 600, what's the drivetrain like now? The inline-4 is beautifully smooth and has that lovely mid-range pull you get with an old long-stroke unit. It's not revvy or buzzy like the FZ6's engine, it's just silky smooth and full of drive. The gearbox may be showing its age, the linkage is notoriously sloppy when worn, but it clunks into gear with a reassuringly solid feel, and the bike is more than happy to break the national speed limit when asked. The Yamaha Fazer is a fairly well-made motorcycle, and except for the black painted downpipes rotting away, or the brake calipers seizing up, the Yamaha Fazer doesn't suffer big problems. It can rack up very high miles with regular servicing. Apart from its thirst for fuel, it would make a great dispatcher's motorcycle. Yamaha Fazer 600 reliability. We've got a whopping 52 Yamaha Fazer 600 owners reviews on the site, and the bike scores 4.6 stars out of 5 overall, with the same score for build quality and reliability. This is an incredibly high score, meaning it's safe to say you can depend on the Fazer 600. Minor issues include the Fazer lacking more modern equipment such as more electronics, but this is an old bike now. You can't expect the world. Its value more than matches its spec. Yamaha Fazer 600 common problems. Early ignition barrels aren't very strong. Check it works smoothly and that the ignition key works the fuel cap and seat lock. The headlight bracket bends if the bike is in an accident and few people replace it, so always check the fairing looks square on the bike. The steel swingarm can trap water and rot around the chain adjusters, so inspect this area well for any obvious rust damage. The Fazer has a 110/70 front tire, and as a result tire choice is limited. You can fit a 120/70, but this can interfere with the mudguard. Yamaha Fazer 600, a mechanic's take. by Chris Spinks, Chief Instructor, Metropolis Training School. The key factor when buying a used FCS 600 Fazer is seeing if it goes into second gear. First gear on the Fazer is quite short and the jump to second puts a lot of strain on the gearbox. This can cause the second gear selector fork to bend, and that leads to a really stiff change and eventually a broken gearbox. On a cheap bike such as a used Fazer, that can write the bike off as replacing it is not economically viable as a complete gasket kit costs £500. That said, when I destroyed my Fazer's gearbox on a track day, I bought a new motor for £400 and swapping them over was fairly simple. The sprocket retaining nut is a classic Fazer fault and well documented. The nut comes loose, the sprocket slides off the shaft and then sits on the threaded part of the output shaft. People think the clutch has gone and rev the motor, which causes the sprocket to strip all the threads off the shaft. You can slide the sprocket back on and spot weld it in place, but you need to be careful not to overheat the seals. As long as you fit the nut correctly using the locking washer, you should be fine, although Yamaha did release a deeper threaded nut and this sorts the issue. The lights on the Fazer are poor, but on the 1998-9 model the bulb vibrates and creates a white powder that fills up the lenses. This is impossible to remove and makes the light even worse. Some owners change the lume to convert the Fazer to twin headlights, which is very easy, but you need to tilt the main beam down or it will fail an MOT. After 15,000 miles the shock will be duff. I'd recommend getting the forks rebuilt and buying an aftermarket shock. Don't be tempted to go for a stiff fork springs. I've found softer ones works better. When it comes to the finish, the paint likes to flake off from the engine's fins, so don't jet wash the engine and check the downpipes. The motor is totally bulletproof, but the cam chain tensioner can need changing and it is a nightmare to get to. At the end of the day, a well-looked-after Fazer is a brilliant buy and totally reliable. At the training school we would see them cover over 65,000 trouble-free miles with only oil changes.